Hello and welcome to Chile Talk. I'm Neil Davidson. I'm with Pete Lee. Well, Pete, we're here to talk again about the Constitution.
We do it a lot, but we do have an election coming up on Sunday, the 7th of May 2023, to elect the constitutional councillors, we're calling them this time, the 50 constitutional councillors who will draft a second attempt at a new constitution.
Now, pretty much, I'm going to stand in here for the uninformed viewer, being myself pretty uninformed about this. One thing I know about it is voting is compulsory, because I had to go to the police station this morning and report that I wouldn't be voting, because I'll be abroad, then you have to present evidence. So they're taking it pretty seriously, you know. Is this to compensate for a lack of perhaps public enthusiasm?
Well, the last process, so the process of 2021 to 2022, was peculiar in that the initial election to choose the members of the convention was not compulsory, and there was a 41% turnout. At the same time, the people who were elected felt that they were reflecting a new democratic current within Chile that had thitherto not been well represented in Chile.
So this we might regard as a kind of attempt to get the normals out. Is that right? The normal people who are going to, you know, to provide ballast for the more enthusiastic, who might just, so some people will simply want a rerun of that last conventional process, which was obviously, you know, pretty horribly unsuccessful. And this is what we're going to avoid this time.
Well, of course,
because this process is different. Perhaps you start by explaining how this process is different to the last one. I think we have covered this before, but we ought to.
Well, I mean, we'll get there, but I should say that in the plebiscite to approve the previous proposal, there was compulsory voting, and it turned out that under compulsory voting, the Chileans thought rather differently compared to their representatives, who were elected by 41% of the electoral roll. So we're having another compulsory election. I think there was a sense that, oh, this is a new kind of democratic lifeblood in the previous constitution, because in the previous election last year in September, simply because the way that the constituents of the convention, the way that they behaved, which was kind of as celebrities, but populist celebrities, was so off-putting to the average Chilean that obviously the proposal was thumped by a margin of, well, 62 to 38.
So I just get this straight. What voting was compulsory last time? It was the final vote.
The final vote,
the actual
whether
proposal.
whether to approve the proposal. In this time, we'll have fewer councillors, 50 in total, less time. There'll be 6 months to write a new document. They'll be assisted by 24 experts who've been appointed proportionally based on representation in the lower house, the House of Deputies, the Congress. They will be assisting these councillors, these 50 councillors, to produce a document which hopefully will be good enough to be passed in another compulsory plebiscite in November 2023.
Great. And so this time the whole thing's been organised along more party political lines.
More explicitly so, more transparently so. In the last election, the election for the constituents, there are a number of lists that were claiming to be independent or not associated with the parties, often hiding party alignment. In this case, we have a lesser number of lists, and they are mostly, or in fact all, aligned to traditional party alliances.
Okay, great. And so, well, this is coming up pretty soon on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, the 7th. And wait a minute, what day of the week is it? It's Tuesday, that's right. So, Chile Talk gives you all the information when you need it, So, do we have any predictions? Who's looking sort of good for this now? Because the first round, I mean, the right, or let's call it the centre right, was bedeviled by the fact it didn't want the process in the first place. So it started off in this kind of foot-dragging way, didn't it? It obviously worked against it. Has that been forgotten now? Are their chances looking better?
Well, this time they're really the front runners under this system. This system is inspired by the Senate system, which has fewer senators, and they're decided essentially by Chile's 16 regions, with some regions being more populous than others and having more representation.
The metropolitan region, of course, is practically half the country, isn't it? But it doesn't get represented to that extent. No.
The most populous regions, well, all except one, the four most populous, including the 9 million person metropolitan region, will have 5 councillors elected on Sunday. Then there's 6 regions will have 3, and 6 will have only 2. Some of the regions have very few people indeed. There is an exception. Bio, which has the second largest city, Concepcion, in it, has recently been divided into there's a new region called Nuble, and because that division happened prior to subsequent to the last census, essentially Nuble, which has around 300,000 people, will have 2 representatives, and Bio, which has Concepcion and almost 2 million people, will only have 3.
So it's kind of like, if you want to say so, sort of grossly unfair system of representation, but familiar to like Americans from their, from their sort of Senate and whatever.
A checks and balances sort of approach. As upper houses usually function like that. Of course, you've got the eccentric upper house of the United Kingdom, where...
Well, that's right. I mean, as an aside, it's all these things that we seem unable to get rid of, like the monarchy and the House of Lords. The reason is that when you look at the alternatives, they're also absurd. So you think you have a second chamber, you can't just directly elect it, just like the first chamber, right? So you've got to have some system that ends up, of course, being grossly unfair because it's not the obvious system.
A House of Review, almost always more conservative, a Senate or upper
That's
house.
right, but it has to be elected in some weird fashion, just so it will be different from the lower house, and the same with the head of state. But anyway, this is a totally different discussion here. But so there it is. So this is so this committee will have this makeup, and this less populous regions are favoured by the system, and these are obviously more rural regions, I suppose, which means they're more conservative.
Yes, that would seem to be the case. In the previous process, of course, Indigenous groups were markedly overrepresented. In this system, it is possible for specifically Indigenous councillors to be elected, but to do so they have to get 1.5% of the total vote cast. And predictions are saying that maybe they will, maybe they won't.
In their region?
No, overall, nationally.
Nationally.
There are actually only 2 Indigenous, that is to say, Original Peoples associated candidates running. They're both Mapuche, and either of those has to get 1.5% of the vote.
For national vote. That's quite a bit.
It's quite a bit, and
they're just running outside of the whole system. This
yes.
is what we would call if you ever at the doctor's, a sobre cupo. It's like an extra spot, which
Yes.
isn't in the original roster.
Supernumerary.
Supernumerary,
Spots.
that's the word, yeah.
And there are also three wholly independent candidates running without lists. It's very unlikely that they'll be elected. And then there are the lists that basically align with the major party groupings. To begin with, we have the Party of the People, PDG, which is a kind of right-leaning, macho populist spirit, very popular in the north of Chile, relatively popular in the north of Chile. May well get some spots. That's led by Franco Parisi, who is a kind of celebrity economist who has a lot of legal problems.
And he seems to have been around forever, without ever quite getting anywhere.
Yes, he's an entertaining guy.
And he had to move abroad because of his legal problems about divorce settlement, right?
Yes, to avoid...
to avoid having to pay whatever it's called in Britain, as well, alimony. Yeah.
Yes. They may well get
Maintenance.
some spots in the north of Chile, a couple of spots.
This is a kind of hard line on immigration, I guess.
Hard line on immigration. A lot of, I guess, by Chilean standards, solidly middle-class men, most of all, associated with the mining industry, identify with PDG. Another grouping is called Todo por Chile.
Todo por Chile.
And this is kind
Everything for Chile.
Yes. This is the dregs of the Concertación, which was the centrist grouping that ruled from 1990 to 2010. They are predicted not to do very well, to the extent that they may not get any spots. We'll have to see. They may do very badly indeed. We'll have to see. Now, the far right, it's often called Partido Republicano, the Republicans, kind of inspired by Trumpism, Bolsonaro, that sort of line, led by Jose Antonio Cast, running as well. They seem to be doing relatively well support-wise in terms of a single party. That's the biggest party in Chile in terms of support at the moment. It is a very solidly right-wing aesthetic. The Republicanos came out of another grouping that often bills itself as the centre-right, Chile Vamos, which is actually running as Chile Seguro, Safe Chile.
Safe Chile. Because, I mean, we've touched on this before and we will again. Two huge issues in Chile at the moment are crime and not unconnectedly immigration. And this is why the right does so well in the north, because immigrants simply cross the land border, with Peru mainly, and there has been. I mean, I was talking to somebody from San Miguel. I mean, he's saying there hasn't really been that big a big increase in crime, but it has changed, and
You've been studying San Miguel.
that's right. Having sort of chastened by my ignorance of Santiago's outlying areas last time, there's very spectacular crime going on now committed by immigrants, Venezuelan, Colombian drug gangs, new exotic things for Chile, kidnappings, all that kind of stuff. And people are very alarmed. A recent survey, was it the Instituto de Estudios Públicos? So that 84% of people want undocumented migrants to be simply expelled from the country.
Yes.
So people are edgy, for sure, and that clearly. And this is when a left-wing government that talks too much about human rights and justice for all and stuff like that, people start to wonder if that's what they really want.
Yes. Well, they're under pressure, the government.
Uh-huh.
Now these. This right is likely to do fairly well at the moment. In fact, Chile Seguro, so the more mainstream right, I would expect to win one spot for a start in each of the regions. So there's 16 regions and a few others. For example, in the ones that have 5 spots, the 4 regions that have 5 spots. It would not surprise me if Chile Seguro were to get 3 more out of the 4 for a total of 19 places. The Republicanos are quite popular towards the south of Chile, quite popular in parts of Santiago as well. I would expect them to get not quite 1 in every region, but I would not be surprised if they got 8 or 9. So if you're adding those 2 right blocks up there, that would already be up to 27, 28 spots out of 50. Plus PDG, the Party of the People in the north, might get 2 more. So you're already starting to get up towards
a pretty solid majority.
60% of the spots. As it happens, 40% of the spots is the kind of number that would be required to veto or to block, that is, any particular proposals.
This is already couched in the rules of the constitution writing process, is it? That's the blocking minority is 40%.
Yes, in the same spirit as that the Senate runs on. Last time it was a third. The right wing was trying to win a third of the spots to be able to block anything, and they didn't get there.
Their very weak pitch to the electorate was kind of give us a third of the votes so that we can block anything too bad, and you must never look so weak, I suppose, in politics.
And they didn't get their vote out. Of the 41% of people who voted, not particularly many were from the right. So it's looking pretty good for that right-leaning style. Of course, the old Concertación, Todo por Chile, may not get very much at all, may not get anything. I think it will get 2, 3, 4 spots. Maybe it'll get more. Now, basically, the government at the moment, which is made up of the Apoyo Dignidad grouping, which consists of the Communist Party plus the Frente Amplio movement, has joined forces with the Socialist Party, which always billed itself as the leftmost part of the centre-left, to run under the name Unidad para Chile.
So unity for Chile, as you can probably guess.
This is a great lesson in the difference between por and para, which is often very difficult for English speakers. So these are unity in order to Chile.
Right, unity, like,
towards.
It's like the gift we're giving Chile. This is
and that's what they're running.
Right, and not sort of on behalf of Chile.
No, which would be poor. And of course, their name is a sop to the name of the coalition of Salvador Allende in the 1970 election, the Unidad Popular, the popular unity, the people's unity.
That's right. A government in which, of course, the Socialist Party was much more militant than the Communist Party, on most historical accounts, kind of wrecked everything for Allende really by taking things too far. His own party. So perhaps a slightly unfortunate historical echo there, really, on the whole, I thought.
Well, they're going for the nostalgia. It is, of course, the 50th anniversary this year of the end of Allende, the famous military coup of 1973. So they're trying to sop up as much of that, including in the imagery that Unidad para Chile is running. They're not predicted to do particularly well, but again, I would expect that grouping to win 1 spot in all of the places. Maybe not quite all. Maybe some of the regions that only have 2 spots will not have representation from this left aesthetic grouping, but I would expect them to get a total of around 15, 16. Of course, getting 2 spots in some of the large urban centres, but that's not a great showing.
That's right. So in your mind at the moment, question is maybe whether the right can actually clear the 60%, rather than whether the right or the left is going to sort of come out ahead on Sunday.
Yes, I mean, some of the commentators are rather giddily expecting to over 60% of the spots going to the right parties. I'm not sure. I think they'll possibly just fall short of that.
That very expectation obviously will tend to get the left vote out, and so on. Yeah.
Yes, and of course, if this is a more right-heavy process, it puts a lot of pressure on the right that they didn't have last time to come up with a respectable document. Of course, there are plenty of right-wing Chileans who love the current constitution, don't see any reason to change it at all. They're not in the majority overall, and there may be a bit of white-anting of the process. There may be some elected elements who don't want their own proposal to be passed, but I think the general sentiment will be that this is a proposal that, well, reflects at least a different electoral system with compulsorily voted councillors, and the onus will be on the right to formulate some kind of...
Yeah, I mean, you can hardly have this whole great process and force everybody to leave their houses on Sunday and vote and then just produce a complete damp squib. You know, you've got to come up with something, right?
Yes, I think so. And as far as the Boric government is concerned, well, to attempt twice to change the constitution and fail twice, I think would be an indictment on them as well. So I do feel that there will be a genuine effort to come up with a passable constitution. Chile wants a new constitution. It just has to be a little more benign.
It just doesn't know what it is, you know.
Yes. And there's only going to be 6 months to formulate it. It's high pressure stuff.
And they will be using the last effort as some kind of basis, I think. But but it's ditching a huge amount of stuff.
Yes. So it's another exciting election. I predict that the right groupings, Chile Seguro, Republicanos, plus a couple of spots to PDG, the Party of the People, I predict that their vote will add up to around 28 or 29 of the 50 spots.